Edmonton is planning a major zoning revamp, which is going to affect the city for decades to come. So we thought we'd come to a neighborhood like the Hills here and find out exactly how it might affect things here. Joining me now is Kaylin Anderson. Kaylin, maybe explain to the folks your interest in this whole subject.
Thank you so much. I'm here on behalf of the Urban Development Institute, and our membership basically develops all of the communities that you see in the Edmonton metro region, including towers downtown, redeveloping the infill neighborhoods, and building new communities like the Hills at Charlesworth.
Now, the Hills here is a pretty new community, right? So how would you describe it?
I would say that the neighborhood is largely under development still. So you'll see excavations happening, active crews working away at building houses, but you'll also see a fully developed park, a new commercial area, and a variety of different housing types that are of varying diversity and density and designs.
How would the new zoning bylaw, change things here or affect the neighborhood, or have they anticipated some of those changes already?
Well, one of the cool things about this neighborhood, and the reason I thought it would be a great idea to come here, is because, in fact, a lot of the housing types that we see in the Hills at Charlesworth aren't currently permitted under the zoning bylaws. They had to be created specifically for this community, and they worked so well that they've been deployed across the whole city. So under the new zoning bylaw, we can imagine that this would be easier, take less time, and therefore less cost for the average home buyer.
I guess that's some of the benefits of this bylaw change. What are some other things that people might see and benefit from?
Well, in terms of the bylaw change overall, I think that we'll see more ability for different uses in homes. So the community just to my left actually has built into each home opportunity for home-based business. So you can front right on to a nice park and have your business there. Under the new zoning bylaw, there will be a variety of different small businesses that are allowed as of right. So you can have estheticians and maybe little day homes and things like that, whereas currently that's not allowed. So I think that we'll see a lot more animation throughout neighborhoods, whether they're new or old, after the bylaw.
Are there any drawbacks that people might be concerned about?
In terms of new neighborhoods, I can't really think of any because literally the developers who are working in these communities are trying to build what people want to buy. So if it wasn't working or if they didn't like it, they simply wouldn't take it up. I think that most of the conversation publicly right now is really about those infill conditions, whether it's high density towers at major TODs, redevelopment along main streets, or even more gentle density in the heart of neighborhoods.
I mean, let's face it, we're right on the edge of the city here. What kind of density are we talking about in this kind of neighborhood compared to the kind of density they're hoping for closer to downtown?
Well, Edmonton's new neighborhoods are the most dense, there's no doubt, in terms of residential communities. The target is about 45 units a hectare, and to kind of give you an example, one of the sort of 1960s neighborhoods in Edmonton would be about 20. So it's more than 2.5 times as dense in these newer communities. And, I think that it's not just about putting more housing in, it's about thinking carefully about how you integrate natural areas, play spaces, walkway connections, and commercial areas so that they're truly livable. So yeah, it's a lot more dense here.
And I guess it's also about how people interact with their neighborhood, the ability to, as you said, have businesses in these houses, but also interact with other businesses that are close by. Is that thought into this?
Yeah, I mean, every neighborhood on its own doesn't kind of stand the test of time in terms of providing everything that people need. So collections of neighborhoods, like 3 to 5 neighborhoods, you'll probably find everything that you need. And that's why part of the city plan itself is really about that district planning, because recognizing that as Edmonton grows from 1 to 2 million people, you can't expect to live in the entire city, nor can you expect to live in just your neighborhood. So these collections of neighborhoods with town centers within the major main streets and a diversity of different retail and housing opportunities is really the future.
Kaylin, thanks for coming down and helping us explore this new neighborhood.
You bet. It's great to be here.
We've already done some coverage and talked a bit about how these zoning bylaws will change new neighborhoods. And there's a lot of room to grow in those spaces in the city. But what about more mature neighborhoods? How might they grow? How might they stay the same? So to find out a little bit more about that, I'm in Bonnie Doon right now, and I'm joined again by Kaylin Anderson, Executive Director for the Urban Development Institute. Thanks for joining us here in Bonnie Doon.
Thanks so much for bringing me here.
So this, like I mentioned, a mature neighborhood. It's been around for years. A lot of people here have lived here for decades.
Yep.
What do we already see in a space like this?
Well, this neighborhood's over 100 years old. It's been actively redeveloping for at least 40, maybe longer. So what's really cool about this neighborhood is that you'll see many different generations of redevelopment. What you'll see here are 1980s bungalows. You'll see 2013 semi-detached homes. You will see a brand new skinny house that's probably currently under construction. And most interestingly, you'll also see really diverse Main Street and little kind of pocket commercial areas that would accommodate everything from a local coffee shop to a daycare.
So you already highlighted a lot of change there that's already been occurring. How might these zoning changes push for even more change?
Well, in a neighborhood like Bonnie Doon, I think what we'll actually see is more of the same, just easier to get done. This is a really cool example of a neighborhood that's already been enabling redevelopment. So when people are in their mature neighborhoods across Edmonton and they're wondering, what will this mean? What will this look like? I strongly encourage everybody to come to Bonnie Doon, walk around, look at the amenities, observe the houses. The scale, density, and diversity of housing that you'll see here is kind of what we're going to be seeing over time in the rest of Edmonton's mature neighborhoods.
What do you say to those that are resistant to see a lot of this change because they like their Bonnie Doon the way it's always been?
It makes better use of our infrastructure, it enables high-functioning transit, and it also allows people to have a diversity of different options in the city because not everyone wants to live in the same place for the same reasons.
What's a good example of how that change, that shift, even though there were detractors, has worked most recently in Bonnie Doon?
Well, I would say look no further than the local kind of commercial redevelopment a block away from us right now. We're seeing a very gentle sort of intensification of the commercial opportunities. So there's a really neat little building which is quite modest in scale, but it accommodates retail and a coffee shop on the ground floor with a small apartment kind of on top. I don't know that the apartment's small, but the building itself is relatively small. Urban growth is not like a tsunami, it's more like a gentle rain. So if people are worried about the changes in their neighborhood, what I would say is they will be incremental. They will happen over the period of many decades to come.
How do we marry that desire to want to live in a central neighborhood like this, one that has roots in the ground, with affordability?
Yeah, well, the truth is for Edmonton's mature neighborhoods and for all major metros across the country, expecting to live in a brand new 2,000 square foot single detached home in a mature neighborhood connected to a ravine and LRT, walkable from the downtown, is not something that most people will be able to afford. And Edmonton's actually the most affordable big city in the country. So if that's our situation, just imagine how bad it can get. But what you can afford, or what is attainable, are smaller units, more high density units, and potentially even mixed use kind of buildings. So you could think of everything from semi-detached right up to a high-rise tower, but everything in between is what we call that missing middle. And that's indeed what the zoning bylaw will enable more of. So those townhouses, small apartments that are pretty subtle, stacked row housing, this is the kind of housing that will be attainable for most people in the future in a mature neighborhood.
Well, thanks for hanging out with me in Bonnie Doon today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.